Okay, let's see. We're holding on um, Lamed Aleph, 31A. So, okay, it's by the words Haya Shechet V'Hitiz. It's about 7 lines from the top. I'm gonna have to step outside in about 10 minutes for a few minutes. I have to take attendance, and the other teacher's not here. So, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And there's chus of our learning we should have the base of Mikdash immediately. It says in the Mishnah that Hittiz Esaresh Bevasachas. If you chop off the head with one go, then it's puzzle because you're not allowed to press when you're doing shechita, one swipe. He said that if he was shechting and he only went in one direction and he cut the head off, so it depends how long the knife is. If the knife has a malait saber, the thickness of a neck, then it's going to be kosher. It means that it's enough to make the incision. So we start like this. Amar Abzeira, when it says the thickness of a neck, malay tzavar, doesn't just mean it has the thickness of the neck. It would mean that you could start cutting the neck at the edge of the knife, and then you would go to the length of the knife. Doesn't just mean that. It means that it has to have also a little bit outside the thickness of the neck. And there's a little bit more. Let's say the neck is 4 inches. It would need to have more than 4 inches. So it says Ibailo. They have a question. What does Reb Zera mean? Maybe what Reb Zera means is that the neck is 4 inches, so it has to be 4 inches plus. Doesn't need to be plus another 4 inches. That you need to have. Also, you have to have 2 necks. Or it doesn't mean just a little bit more. Excuse me. So Tashma, let's come and listen. Being a raya from what's later on in the Mishnah that if a person does shchita, the shchita, excuse me, on 2 heads together. So if the knife has the thickness of one neck, then it's kosher. What's going on? My what do you mean the thickness of one neck? You just cut 2 necks. If you want to say that it's one neck and no more, it can't be that, because when you have one animal, we said that the thickness of one neck would not be satisfactory. You would need to have a little bit more. We had two options. There's a little bit more or double, but definitely just the neck won't work. So why, when we're cutting 2 heads together, doing shchita on 2 heads, that one neck would be enough, because it says you just need the amount of a neck, which we said was, let's say an example could be, let's say it's 4 inches. So if it's with 2 animals, yeah, you need less than with 1 animal. Rather, you have to say, when it says you need the size of a neck, that means that you need the size of a neck besides for the neck. So when you have 2 animals, it's the size of a neck besides for the 2 necks, which is now means 3. So it's going to be 12 inches. It's a 12-inch blade. So what we're doing now is we're learning how to interpret the first part of the Mishnah based on what it says in the second part of the Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah is when you cut 2 heads, you need the size of a neck. And we're understanding now that the size of a neck doesn't mean the size of the knife. It means the size of the knife, plus the size of the knife that has to be the size of the neck plus an extra neck, which means it's 4 inches plus 4 inches plus an extra 4 inches. So Shema Mina, if that's the case, that when it says the size of a neck, it refers to besides for the original amount. So Shema Mina Malei Tzaver Chutz Tzaver Shema Mina. So now we go back to Reb Zera. Reb Zera says that if that based on the Mishnah, that if the shechita is done when he only goes in one direction, he doesn't go back, only goes in one direction. So the size of the knife needs to be malay taber, the size of the neck. And Reb Zera adds in, it means v'chutz l'tzaber, outside the neck. Now we didn't know if he meant malay taber means the basic plus a little bit, or maybe he means that the outside the neck needs to be a malay taber, means an extra 4 inches. So based on what we have in the Seifa, which is impossible to learn, that malay taber just means the neck. So therefore it has to mean besides for the neck an extra. So therefore we go back to Reb Zera, who was discussing the Reisha. We say that it means besides for the neck. So in the Reisha we would need 8 inches, and in the Seifa we would need 12 inches. Talking about doing a shechita when you only go in one direction. Then it goes on. It says, when do we say this? That's only if you're going in one direction. You're only going to and not fro, right? You're not saying the shechita is supposed to go back and forth. This, if you only go in one direction, so then it needs to be this size. Amar of Menashe, the Ismail she'en like karnayim. This is going to work. It said in the Mishnah that you can use the small, if you're going to go back and forth, to and fro, when you're doing the shechita, then you can use the smallest amount, even the size of a razor blade. And Ismail is like the blade that would be used for bris milah, is like a scalpel, tiny knife. So you can do a shechita even with a tiny knife, as long as you go back and forth. Now, however, Reb Menashe says that they used to have a knife that had karnayim. That means that the blade, there was a blade, but at the edge of the blade, it would come out like like horns, I guess it would hold it in place when you would shecht. So those horns were also sharpened, but it would curve. So if that's the case, now that we have a problem, because those horns could be actually poking, and you can't use something that pokes for shechita. So Amar Rav Acha Breder Rav Avila Rav Menashe Machtamai. What if you just use the tiniest blade, the size of a needle, and you would just take the needle and go scrape it down and cut with this needle? Amalei Machta Mivza Baza. Tells him back, no, you can't use a needle for shechita. That a needle pierces. Mivza Baza means it pierces. What about Machta the Ushkafi Mai? This was probably a thicker needle. This was used by shoemakers or leather makers. They would use a larger needle. A Malay Tanina, it says afilu kosher. That's already, we have, it says even the smallest amount is kosher. My love, machta the ushkafi. It must mean even that size. It says loy ismal. It doesn't mean, when it says kosher, it doesn't mean the needle. It means the smallest blade, not a needle. Ismal would be the scalpel. The Gemara says, Ismal, behedi ktanila. That we said clearly in the Mishnah that you could use an Ismal. What does it mean, afilu kolshu? Well, actually, if you look at the Mishnah, it says, afilu kolshu, afilu be'ismal. So it sounds like the Ismal is explaining what the kolshu is. So Gemara says, Prushikam Afaris. It's just, when it says Ismal, it's just explaining what it says. It's not saying you can use this or you can use that. No, it's saying you can use even the smallest amount. For example, an Ismal. So, Hachinam Mistabra, it says, so my Kolshu Ismal. Hachinam Mistabra, Disak, Machta the Ushkafi. If it would enter your mind to say that you can even use the needle of a tanner, so then Ismal Mibai, then would it have to tell me that you can use a razor blade? For sure you can use it. If you can use a needle, you can use a razor blade. The Gemara says actually not. Maybe you could say like this: Ismal Tzrichalei, that even though we said that you can use a needle to shecht, it could be that I wouldn't know that you can use a razor blade. And why is that? Because sometimes an Ismal has these horns, these protruding ends to the Ismal, that can make a gzeira that maybe if you're going to use Ismol without horns, which we said that's the one you have to use, maybe you're going to end up using the Ismol with horns. So the fact that you can use an Ismol is a chiddush, because I could think that maybe you might use the wrong one. So Kamash Malon, so it would tell me that I can use an Ismol. So you can't prove from this that you can use a needle. You can't prove from this that you can't use a needle, because if you could use a needle, then why would it have to tell me Ismol? Because it would have to tell me Ismol anyway, because Ismol has a second problem that a needle doesn't have. So I could think that basically we're left off here where we don't really have a clear proof that you can't use this type of needle. We said that a needle, what's it called? A needle pierces, but this larger needle maybe you could use. Rashi says it's an awl, the thing that's used to make a hole in the leather. It's used, Rashi says, it's used to cut the stitches. Is there a word for this, like a little thing that cuts stitches? It has a hook. It has like one point is larger, pointy, and the other side is like, you use it to like take stitches out. I don't know if there's a word for that. Stitch remover. Okay. Let's learn the Mishnah, and then I'm going to have to step out for a few minutes to take attendance in the Zal. Nafla sakin b'shachta. The Mishnah says that if a knife falls off the table, and while it's falling down, it shechts an animal that happens to be at the edge of the table. Even though, what do you know? It's a perfect shchita as it was falling, still psula. It's pasul shnemar v'zavachta v'achalta. It says that you have to shecht it, and then you'll eat. Can't be that it happens on its own. Oh, a seam ripper. So only what you shecht you can eat. This didn't have koyach gavra. This didn't have your strength. Yeah, Dr. Stein spoke about koyach gavra yesterday. Taima denafla. The reason why it's not going to be kosher is because it fell. Hahipila, who? But let's say he dropped it or he threw it, he caused it to fall, then kshera. It's only if it fell on its own. But if he dropped it, if he was pushing it off, for whatever reason, then the shechita would be kosher, because that is kayach gabra. Afagav lemechaven. We're seeing, you see, there's two possible problems with the shechita where it falls. One problem is that he didn't have kavana for shechita. The other problem is that it didn't have kayach gabra. It wasn't a person doing it. It was happening on its own. So we gave an example of one where it doesn't have kayach gavra, because it fell on its own. But let's say he caused it to fall, he pushed it, so then it would have the kayach gavra. But so would that be kosher? Yeah, that seems like it would be kosher, because we said the whole problem was because it didn't have kayach. That means if it does, then it would be kosher. The problem is now that it doesn't have kavana. He didn't have kavana to shecht. He was cleaning the table. He pushed it up. So Mantanad leibin kavana l'shchita. Who is the opinion that holds that you don't need kavana for shchita? Amar Rava Reb Nassan. Rava says it's Reb Nassan. Okay, if you hold on right here, just give me a moment. I got to run to the zal, and I'll be back in a moment. I'm just going to pause the recording Okay, so we said that that there's an opinion that holds that you don't need kavana for shchita. You don't need intention. It's just as long as you did it, it's gonna be kosher. Who's that opinion? So Rabbi says it's Reb Nassan. The Tani Oishia Zeira de Min Chevraya. This is very interesting. This phrase, Oishia Zeira de Min Chevraya. Oishia Zeira de Min Chevraya. He taught. Now Oishia Zeira could be read Oishia, the young one or the small one from the yeshiva, or it could be Oishia Zeira de Min Chevraya, the youngest of the yeshiva. It depends where you put the comma. It could be Oishia, comma, Zir de Min Chabraya. He's the youngest of the yeshiva. Or his name could be Oishia Zeira, maybe like Oishia the Short. He was in the yeshiva, or Oishia the Young, he was in the yeshiva, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, it says like this. It could be, it wants to differentiate between Rav Oishia versus this Oishia. The Tani Oishia Zid min Chavar, Zark Sakin Lanaitza B'Kaisel, V'holcha V'shachta Kedak. Let's say, forget they used to have these like stars. You would throw them and they would like get stuck in a wall. I feel like these ninja type things that throw this the star. And it was anyway. Someone's throwing a knife, and he throws the knife, and it's like to stick it into the wall. That was, I guess, axe throwing. So what happens is, while it's going, it happens to shecht a bird flying by or an animal that was running by. So Reb Nosson machshav cham peisim. Reb Nosson says it's kosher. Chum says it's possible. No, yeah, it's a machlekes. Machlekes Reb Nosson l'chachamim. But in our Mishnah, we're medayik that it says that when is the shechita not good? Only if it fell. But if it was you that was doing it, so then it's going to be kosher, even though you don't have kavana. So who would that be? Our Mishnah, that would be the opinion of Reb Nosson that yes, the chachamim argue, but that would be that opinion that holds that you don't need kavana for shechita. Now it says who tani levu amala. He's the one that taught this. This, I guess it means this is Rabbi Shia. And Rabbi Shia explained that halacha ke Reb Nosson, that the halacha is like Reb Nosson. Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if that means, yeah, I assume that this is Rabbi Shia that taught it. There is another option of learning this at Hutani law. No, it doesn't make sense. It would have to be this. It's Rabbi Shia that taught it. I thought maybe it's Rava that. The Gemara now asks, okay, so you have a Mishnah that says that fits with Reb Nosson, and Rava is the one that's telling this to us. Rava already told us this. The Tanan, we had at the beginning of the Masechta, we had that if a chayre sheitav a katan shecht, it's a problem. We don't know if they did it correctly. We don't know if they did that. But if someone was watching them, then it's going to be kasha. Now, a chayre sheitav a katan is a deaf mute, an imbecile, and a child. We see that if someone's watching them, it's going to be good, even though there's no kavana. You see that their shechita, they don't have kavanah because it's a child. We don't consider as kavanah or a deaf mute. We don't think his kavanah is any. So in Rava says over there that it's the opinion of Reb Nosson. So we already know from Rava that the Stam Mishnah, the anonymous author of the Mishnah, holds like Reb Nosson. The Gemara says, Tzricha, I need to have both of these Mishnayos. See, they're two independent cases. One is a case where a chayre sheitav a katan did it. One is a case where a person was like throwing a knife or something, or he dropped a knife, and it was an adult that did it without intention. The other one is where the person wasn't able to have intention. The Yashmin and Hassam over there by the chayre sheitav a katan mishum the kamachav and l'shem chaticha b'olam. The chayre sheitav a katan, of course, he meant to cut something. He took a knife. He was going to cut something. He cut an animal. He did a shechita, but he knew that he was cutting. Maybe he didn't know the kavanah for shechita. He didn't know the halachas, but he knew that he's cutting, and so shechita was cutting. Aval hachad like a mechaven over here, he didn't have any kavanah at all. Here he's just knocking the knife, pushing the knife, throwing the knife. He didn't even have kavanah to cut. I could say maybe that's not kosher. And if we'd only say over here, because over here it's coming from a person that is an intelligent person. I could say that you have to be able to have kavana. Over there, you're not even able to have kavana because it's a chayre sheitav a katan. It's a deaf mute. I could think that maybe it won't be good. So tzricha. So Rava comes to tell me that Reb Nosson would agree. Reb Nosson would hold by both of these cases that it's kosher. Okay. Itmar, we mentioned not having kavana, that it works. So we're going to go through some other cases of not having kavana, and interestingly, if it's going to work or not. Itmar, nida shenensa v'tavla. If a nida went to the mikveh without intention, she was nensa. Nensa, in some context, means raped. Over here, it doesn't mean that she was pushed in or she fell in. We're going to see in the Gemara later what happened. So she ends up, she just fell in the water. She didn't have kavana for the mikveh. And is it going to work when she comes out? Is she tar? Or she didn't even realize that she was in a mikveh. She went swimming. Amar Rav Yudam Rav, Tahir lebeis of Asur lechel b'truma. So there's two halachas of a nida. One halacha is she permitted to be with her husband? The other halacha does she impart tuma to things that she touches? So that would be relevant to eating truma. If she's a wife of a kohen, the daughter of a kohen, and she's not married, then she would be allowed to eat truma if she's tahar. So here she fell into the mikveh, and we're saying that she's permissible to her husband, but she's not permissible to eat truma because she didn't have kavana. Rabbi Yochanan has a stricter opinion. Basically, a machlekes between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Where Rav says that the mikveh does not require kavana, and Rabbi Yochanan says that the mikveh does require kavana. Amalei Rava le Rav Nachman. So Rava says to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman is Rava's teacher. It's very common for Rava to discuss with Rav Nachman. The Rav Darmatari Lebesi says, I don't get Rav. Rav says that she's tahar to her husband, but she still can't eat shum. So I don't get it. Avain kares hutra, avain misimi bai. The punishment of being a nida and living with the husband is much stricter than the punishment of being a nida and eating truma. And you said when it comes to being with the husband, you said that she's pure. And now for the minor thing, for the major thing, you said that she's pure. For the minor thing, you say that she's not pure. The difference here is that being with the husband when she's a nida is a kares. Kares is that the person dies young and his children also die young. And Misa, Truma is Misa bidei Shamayim. That means the person dies, the person passes away, but not that the children pass away also. So Kares is much worse. And nevertheless, we say that regarding the husband, we say that she's pure. So for sure, it should be a Kal V'chaimer. Rav is asking Rav Nachman. The Gemara says, "Amarlei by lachulenu v'chulnei by kavan." He says you have a Kal V'chaimer, but you're not matching it properly because it goes under a different category. For the husband, it's considered mundane, something mundane, and we're stricter when it comes to kachim. For kachim, you need to have intention, and for things that are mundane, you don't need intention. So even though, this halach happens to be stricter, but the rule is that for the mundane things, you don't need intention. Mina Taimra, where do we know that you don't need intention? The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Gal Shenitla Shabaya Ba'amsa. This is like a surfer's Gemara. If there's a wave that comes out of the water, and in that wave itself is 40 sa, V'nafal ala Adam, and that wave fell on the person, Ba'ala Kalim, or it fell on utensils, the surfboard maybe. Tahir and everything is Tahir. My love. Adam Dami the Kalim. Now, was there intention here to go to the mikveh or not? So we said, well, there were two things here. There was a person and there was utensils. The utensils don't have intention, right? So Ma Kalim Nami. So if we do a comparison here for the person to the utensils, and the wave came out of the water and it fell on top of the person and it fell on the utensils, so we'll assume that there was no intention by the utensils, no intention by the person. And nevertheless, we say that they're both tar. So we see that when it comes to mundane things, you don't need intention to use a mikveh. It's going to be good even without intention. Mimai says, how do you know that there was no intention there? We just said that a wave came out of the water and fell on a person. Maybe the person sees the wave coming and says, oh, great, I needed to use the mikveh. And he knows that it's going to fall on it. Dilma, b'yeshiv mitzabaskin, maybe he was waiting and hoping that will the wave come out and get me and go over me. When will the wave come over? The Kalim Dum Adam will say exactly the opposite. We were doing a comparison saying that the person is like the utensils. Just like utensils don't have intention, so to the person also doesn't. So maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the person has intention, and the utensils have the intention of the person whose utensils they are, that he wants them to be in the mikveh. Ma adam de bin kavanaf kel nami de kamachaven lo adam. That the person was intending that the wave will go over it and it will purify everything. So we're asking now, we were looking for a source where you don't need intention for chulin. So we thought we had a source because a wave comes out of the water and it falls on a person or in utensils, the person's tar. Seems like you don't need intention. He said, maybe not. It's not a good proof. Now the Gemara suggests, says, no, you can't say that it's Yeshiv Mitzapa. If he's waiting, if he actually has intention, then what's the chiddush? Of course, he went to the mikveh. Says, well, he didn't really go to the mikveh. This is a sort of a unique case. Mao detema ligzar mishum chad l'shel geshamim. Inami ligzar Russian not to keepin. Mashman blegazin. We have two problems with this surfer. He's on a surfboard and the wave is coming over him and he doesn't make it out and it goes on. And two problems with this. One problem is that in this situation, he's in the ocean. In the ocean, even if the water's flowing, the water's moving, it's still kosher because we consider the ocean like a Mayan. But if it would be a flash flood, flood that was coming down the mountain because of rainwater, sometimes like the melting rainwater, snow or something, the melting snow comes down. Now, the rule is that a rainwater is not allowed to be flowing. It can't be flowing. And there's another problem with the rainwater, and that could be that you don't have enough water in one area. Because when it's coming down a hill, it has a problem of cataphrus. We don't look at all the water as attached. When it's coming down an incline, we look at the water separately. You say like there's this huge amount of water that's coming down, but I don't view it like 40 sa. Because where's the 40 sa? Well, if you include the bottom of it, you include the top of it, include the middle of it, then altogether there's 40 sa. But I don't do that when it's coming down an incline. It's called cataphrus. It doesn't combine all of this. That was the old problem the people had with the Chabad. The problem people had with the Rebbe Shab's mikvah was they said that where's the rainwater? It's down in the bottom. Where's the water on that you're toveling in? It's on the top. It's being connected through a vertically. It's connected vertically. The traditional mikveh was horizontal, was on the side, and they called it katafras. The Divrei Chaim claimed that was a problem, and the response to that was that no, it's really one mikveh because it's directly on top. When this katafras an issue, that's when it's on an incline. It's not directly on top. There's one part down over here, and there's one part up over here. It's not even on top of it. If you push down, you're not even going to the water. By us, you push down, you fall in the pit. So whatever the case is, there's a problem with the wave. That if you're going under a wave in an ocean, that's acceptable. But that could be, someone may think that, a wave in the ocean is acceptable. Maybe a wave of a flash flood is also acceptable. Or someone may think that the surfer goes under the wave and he tries to make it out before it collapses on him. Someone may think that being in that circle, is that what Yitzi's doing in a tunnel? Being in that tunnel of I don't know what it's called, in the arc of the arch of that wave. Some may think that even when you're in the ear, that's acceptable as a mikveh because you went in the water. You're not actually wet, but you went through the water. So some may think that that's good, and it's really not. So the chiddush of the wave is that it doesn't have to be that it's without kavana. I have another chiddush of the wave, even if it's with kavana. I have other chiddushim that you don't make a gzeira because maybe of a chard lesson. You don't make a gzeira because of reisha not to keep in. That even though you did get wet, but maybe you might think that you don't really need to get wet, and someone else. So we don't make that gzeira. If that's the case, then I'm left with a chiddush of this mishnah, even if there is kavana. So what's back to what the whole flow of the Gemara is? The Gemara is looking for a source that I don't need kavana to use the mikvah. We thought we had one from this wave. Turns out that it's not a real source. because it could be that by this wave there was kavanah. Minat Temra, the Gemara, this is like parenthetically. Gemara says, Minat Temra delay matbulin bekeeping. How do you know that you can't be toivel in the arch, in the tunnel of the wave? The Tanan, we have a mission that says clearly, matbilin bereishin vein matbilin bekeeping, shem matbilin ba'avir. You can't go to the mikveh in the air. This wouldn't work. Yeah. This would be you're under the water, but you're not really getting wet. Okay, so back to our original discussion here. And how do you know that chulin doesn't require kavana? We're going to the mikveh just for regular things, not for the Beis Hamikdash things. How do you know that you don't need kavana? And the Tanan, we have a Mishnah. If there's fruits that fell into a stream of water, the rule with fruits that get wet is that they become susceptible to tumah. And the pasha mishiyad of tameya is someone whose hands are tamei, stretch his hands in to get the fruits out, but not lan, takes the fruits out. So yad of tyrus, even though he didn't intend to wash his hands, he needed to wash his hands. He didn't intend to, but he's washed his hands. And the fruits are not considered wet because you really didn't have any intention to wash your hands. You didn't have intention to wet the fruits. It all fell in by mistake. You jumped in to save them, but so he put his hands in to get the fruits. So the fruits, his hands. The rule is that his hands are now pure, but the fruits are not considered susceptible to tumah. In order for the fruits to be susceptible to tumah, you have to have some willingness about it getting wet. Either your hands getting wet or the fruits getting wet. But here you didn't have any of that. But if he wanted to wash, it's probably if he wanted to wash his hands, then Yadav Tyrus Bechiyutan, then of course his hands are clean and the fruits are also susceptible. Now, what did we see over here? That even though he didn't have intention to wash his hands got clean. And I don't mean clean as in cleanliness, I mean clean as in pure. It's clean, but pure. So that means that you don't need intention for chulin. Eisvei Rav Nachman. Rav and Rav Nachman are discussing this. He says, Tava l'chulin. Rav has a question. Says, we have a Mishnah or a Brisa, says if someone goes to the mikveh because he wants to eat chulin, he wants to eat just mundane foods, and he wants to keep it pure. And he has intention for that. Asala meiser. He's not pure enough for meiser, which is meiser sheni. Meiser sheni, you have to be pure when you eat it. So which means that you need to have intention for meiser, and you didn't have the intention for meiser. What did he have intention for? For chulin. Now, why do you have intention for chulin? For chulin, you don't even need intention. So the Gemara says like this: apparently, Rav is claiming that for the chulin, in order for him to be pure for chulin, you need to have intention for chulin. If you didn't have intention for chulin, then you can't just go to the mikveh without intention. You have to know what you're doing. The Gemara says, "Hachi kamer." No, that's not a good proof, because what it means is, even though you did have intention, but you just didn't have intention what you were going to eat. You went to the mikveh. Let's say like this. We go to the mikveh before davening. We go before Shabbos. We go before we go to the oil. Let's say someone goes to the mikveh because he's going to daven. He's in the yard, and then sure enough, they say, "Oh, we're going to the oil. You want to go to that?" So he goes to the oil. So the mikveh for the davening, was that good enough for a mikveh for the oil? Over here we're saying that the mikveh for chulin was not good enough for the mikveh for meiser. I'm giving a funny mashal, but just it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for meiser. You have to have intention for that. But maybe according to us, you don't even need to have intention for the first thing. You don't even need to have intention at all for chulin. And here we're saying that he had intention for chulin. It says no. It's not saying that he had intention for chulin. We're saying even if he had intention for chulin, it doesn't work for meiser. Eisvei has another question. It says clearly, you go to the mikveh, but you didn't have intention. Huchzak over here means like intended for something. It's as if you didn't go to the mikveh. My love, kilo leitava klal. It's if you didn't go at all. It says like kilo leitava l'meiser aval tava l'chulin. No, over there was talking about for meiser. You didn't go to the mikveh for meiser, but for chulin it would still be good. Now, who's suffered the chuy kamad chalei? Rava thought that Rav Nachman was just giving him answers that were just to push him off. But it wasn't really a good answer. Rava thought that you really needed to have kavana for the mikveh. Nafak, he goes out, duck, he does research, Ashkach, and he comes up with, he finds the Tanya Tavel Vayhochsak Mutal Chol Masalam. I say actually there was a brisa clearly that said that if someone goes to the mikveh and he doesn't have intention, it's still good enough for regular things, for mundane things, but it's not good enough for Maisa. Amalei Abaye over Rabbi Yosef. Abaye says to Rabbi Yosef, 1 second. Rabbi Yochanan said that if you go to the mikveh and you don't have intention, even a woman that goes to the mikveh doesn't have intention, she can't be with her husband. But here we're saying that she could be with the husband. Here we're saying that it's good for chula. We said the husband was chul. Said that it's good enough. It's a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. This price should be a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei, he responds, Rabbi Yochanan, who damak Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef. Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef. The Tanya was started in Bryce, Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef, Aimer, V'kivas, Matamalei Mashenis, V'kuvas. Kuvas, I think it says. Talking about over here, when something becomes tamei with saras, the kohen says that you have to wash it, and then if it's a question, if it's tamei, so you have to rinse it, and then it says afterwards, if it goes away, you have to rinse it again, and when it goes away, you rinse it again, and that's when it becomes pure. The second rinsing is to purify it. The first one is to check if it's really tamei. It's like quarantined. That's what it is. It's quarantined. So before the quarantine, you rinse it, and then it says v'kuvas shenas. The brisa says, why does it have to say a second time? Of course, you washed it once, so now it's the second time. So makish tachvuses shniya letachvuses rishayna. We're doing a comparison between the two launderings. Matva tachvus rishayna ledas. Just like over there, the kohen commands him and says to go wash it. Also, the second washing has to be with intention. So maybe over here you also need intention. The kohen needs to tell you to go make it tar. It says no. It says no. You have to intention, but you don't need the kohen to command you to do it. Tar mikol makom. Okay. So we see that Rabbi Yonasan says that you need to have intention. So Rabbi Yochanan would hold like him. Maskav l'Rasim Barashi Yom Rabbi Yochanan Achi. Rabbi Yochanan, you're going to say that he holds like Rabbi Yonasan ben, what's his name? Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef. But halachik stam mir, Rabbi Yochanan halachik stam misna. Utanan nafla sakim v'shachtaf b'she shachta gedak psula. V'avin batam the nafla pilu k'sheira. Afgalim mechaben rin mantan lebe kavan l'shchita. Rav Nasani. We had our Mishnah, and our Mishnah is a stam Mishnah. Our Mishnah is talking about shchita. And by shchita we said that if the knife falls, it's the shchita's puzzle. He said, but if he pushed it, if he dropped it, then it would be good. Now, he didn't have kavana to shech. He had kavana. It was just kayach gavra. It was his strength, but he didn't have kavana for it. We said that would be the opinion of Reb Nassan, and that it would be kosher. And Reb Yochanan says, Allah is like a stam Mishnah. We see that by shchita you don't need kavana. Probably by tefillah you also don't need kavana. The Gemara says, b'shchita afilu Reb Yonasan ben Yosef. He would agree. I have a source that says that when you're shechting a karban, it says that you have to shecht it with the intention of that it should be appeasing. That means you need to have kavana when you're shechting a karban. Oh, you're shechting a karban, you need to have kavana. That would tell me if it's not a karban, then you don't need kavana. Yeah, it's implied that it's only by the karban where you need kavana. So if that's the case, so we have a source for shchita where you don't need kavana, and Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosef would agree to that. For Rabbanan, the problem now is, if I have a source for that, so how did you tell me it's a machlekes the Chachamim and Reb Nassan? Reb Nassan says it's good, and the Chachamim say that it's not good if you don't have kavana for shchita. Rabbanan nidlei bin kavana lezvicha lechaticha beinan. The truth is, you need kavana to cut. You don't need kavana that it's a shchita, but you need to have kavana that what you're doing. So therefore, they would say that if you're just throwing a knife or if you're dropping a knife, something like that, that's not going to be acceptable. But if you're shechting without kavana, if you're cutting something without kavana, that would be acceptable for shchita. Amar Rava, B'Hazakinu Rav Nasan l'Rabbanan. Rava says that Rav Nasan is right. He has the source. Miksiv v'chatacht v'zavachta ksiv. Over there, by the carbon, it says that you have to shecht it, and which means that by the chulin, you don't have to have the shechita. Ibi in kavana lechaticha, afil lezvicha nami libai. Ilai bin kavana lezvicha lechaticha nami libai. When it says 1 second, do you need kavana to cut? Then you should need kavana to shecht. If you don't need kavana to shecht, then you shouldn't need kavana to cut. So heichidami what? Okay, no. So 1 second. Bin kavana. So 1 second. Let's see how to do this. On page 21B, right? It says like this. I said it wrong. Miksiv. When it's talking about chulin, it says v'zavachta. Now, I was thinking it was talking about where it says l'tzeinchem. By a carbon, it says l'tzeinchem as an appeasement. But over here it says v'zavachta, you shall shecht. Does it say you shall cut? No. It says you should shecht. Which means that it doesn't make a difference between cutting and slaughtering. If we require intent for cutting, we should require intent even for slaughtering. And conversely, if we do not require intent for slaughtering, we should not require intent for cutting. So we were saying that according to the Rabbanan, there was a difference between intent for cutting or intent for slaughtering, where you don't need intent for slaughtering, but you still need intent for cutting. And Reb Nassan says that you don't need intent for either. And now, just the last piece over here, it says, what was the case of the woman that ended up in the mikveh without kavanah? Are we saying that her friends grabbed her and threw her in the mikveh and they pushed her in the mikveh? Kavana de chaverta, kavana malaisi. The friends' kavana should work because they were forcing her to go under and they had kavana. She should be able to eat shuma. The Tanan achareshes v'asheita v'asum shitz v'daita. Miyeshlam pikchus misak neisnechus bit shuma. What would they do if there was someone that went a little crazy, and her food that she would eat would be shuma? What they would do is the people would put her in the mikveh, and that would work because they were putting her in. She could still eat shuma. So if the friends pushed her in, then it's not just that she's pure for her husband; she would be pure even for truma. And Rabbi and Rav didn't say that she's pure for truma. Rav just said she's pure for the husband. So Amar of Papa, Amar of Papa, Rav Papa says Rav Nasan that says that you don't need any kavana at all. That's shenafla min hagesher. I mean, she just fell off a bridge. She didn't even realize that she's going to the mikveh, and nevertheless, that would still work. And the Rabbanan, sheyard lahaker. And according to the Rabbanan, where you need intention that you're going into water, you just don't need intention that it's a mikveh. So that she was going in just to cool off. She was going for a swim, and that would work according to the Rabbanan, according to Rav, for her husband. Okay, let's leave it by Amar Rava. Shukayach, everyone. So tomorrow, same time.
Rabbi,
yeah.
Last minute question. If you see my avatar was a woman falling from a bridge into the water. Yeah, I tried to do that.
It's not that it wasn't Sneas. It's not Sneas.
No, that was the most serious
It's not bad.
Covered in these. Anyway, if that woman was on the way to the mikvah,
It's not Sneas. Get it off the screen.
Stop it. And then accidentally fell from the bridge into the ocean. So then she had her kavana, right, to go mikvah, although it was a different mikvah, and then she got mikvahed. So what would the answer be there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I assume that's what the poskim say, that when someone goes to shul to hear the shofar, and then during the shofar he's like not concentrating. We rely on his first intention.
Oh, I like that. That's a good answer.
I think that's what we rely on his first intention. That what was he going to shul for? He was going to hear the shofar. He was going to hear Kriyas Torah, Kriyas Megillah. So that's why he went. So even though in the middle he got distracted, but the first intention, maybe that would be the answer. I'm guessing at that.
Okay, Yeshkoich. I'll try and keep the avatars up to date. I forgot that I could do that, like from COVID days. All right, have a good day.
Okay,
See you tomorrow.
okay.